Hey, I'm Brian.
I'm Kaylene.
And this is our veggie patch. Welcome. Now, if you watched our first video, you've got your seeds sown and your seedlings are going to be underway. Now it's time to work out your actual veggie patch. Now, vegetables love sunlight. So the best spot to do it is a nice sunny spot in your yard. Now, behind me there is a big tree and it does provide some shade, but it is a deciduous tree, which means it loses its leaves in autumn, which is very soon, and the sun will shine through. Some plants like a little bit of shade, and so we generally tend to put those plants in those beds in the summer months. But overall, you want a nice sunny spot. To give you an idea of how big this garden is, it's 8 by 12 meters inside. So we've got 8-meter long rows. I've divided it up into 4 beds. Each bed is 2 meters by 1 meter across. And then of course we've got 8 rows coming down here with paths in between them. So I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can set up a veggie patch, ranging from raised garden beds like this to large planter bags and then growing in the ground using the soil that you've already got. Now, we've built our beds out of hardwood new sleepers. Don't mistake these for railway sleepers that you often see advertised. Although they look really attractive, they're not great for growing vegetables because they tend to have a lot of oils and chemicals in them which can leach out into the soil. So if you have built your beds already out of railway sleepers, just keep that in mind. I would recommend removing the soil and lining it with a food grade plastic or some corrugated iron to stop the chemicals leaching further into the soil would be a good idea. I'm going to show you exactly how to build these beds when we go inside the workshop in a minute, and I'm also going to cover some other ways. Now, I just want to highlight we've got 2 sleepers high here. You can see, and I've made each of these rectangles and they just sit on top of each other. I haven't bothered about putting posts in because it's not tall enough to really worry about. We've found they just sit on top of each other, they're nice and heavy and they're staying there really well. There is a metal brackets on the inside of the bed here. You can see that in the close-up shot, and that just gives it some strength, rigidity, so it stays a nice square shape. Look, over time these hardwood sleepers will break down, they're not treated. And I'm not too worried about that. We will have to replace it, and at least it's not going to damage the soil at all. Why didn't we use treated pine? Because treated pine, although they tell us is safe now, and particularly there are varieties of it that are designed for veggie patches, I have to say that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were also told treated pine was safe then. So I'm just playing it really safe, and I'm just going with something that's totally natural. So now I want to show you some other methods that you can do if you can't set up raised beds like this. Now, the most basic way that you can set up a veggie patch is to use the soil that you've got in your backyard. If you've been blessed with some topsoil and it's reasonable, that's going to be a great option. If you've got lots of clay, I wouldn't recommend it. I recommend you get onto one of the raised garden beds and bring in some good quality soil. Otherwise, you're going to be just fighting against that clay. It's going to be hard. So if we're creating it in the ground here, we've got some reasonable topsoil here on our property. We're going to mark out our beds. I've roughly done them about 1 meter wide, and then have a pathway. Now, this is how I've set the raised beds up, but what I'd actually suggest after doing this, I thought about it a bit more, is that when you're growing at soil level here, you tend to want to build the soil up. And so the bed tends to spill out to the side. So what I would do is allow the bed to be wider, probably 1.2 meters total, so the slope will go to here, and then have a pathway that goes another maybe 60 centimeters wide, and then another bed. Now, to dig this over, I can see I've got a bit of grass and weeds here. Normally I'd say get a spade, dig all those off first, and then start breaking up your soil using a mattock and a spade to really dig it over, and a hoe. I'm going to show you a much easier way to do it because this is how I would do it now, and that's going to be using the power planter. So I'm not even going to worry about removing the grass and the weeds. I'm going to dig it over and then just rake those off. So let's give it a go. Now that was how to do it the easy way using the power planter. So if you haven't seen one of these, this is a tool that we've been selling for the last 4 years, and there's I think about 70,000 Australians using these. Absolutely brilliant, so much easier than manual digging. You just attach it to an 18-volt cordless drill. We've got full instructions on how to use it. This is the long one, this is the 324H model, and they go all the way down to small sizes for planting seedlings. So check that out. Now the technique I used is that I drilled a row of holes. You would have seen that, and then I moved on to the next row of holes. And then once I've gone through all that, with it still spinning, I then moved to break up all the bridging soil. It's a bit like using, you know, a stick blender in the kitchen. Certainly a lot easier, and it breaks up really fine. Now, I'd probably go over that again so that I can go down deeper, so that I can dig down to about 30 centimeters, I think would be ideal for most vegetables to be very happy with that. So I'd probably just go over that again, and then that soil will be ready. And I'd also get the rake out. I mentioned before about the weeds, and I just go through and actually just pull up all the reeds off to the side so we can pull that grass out. But you can see it's all nice and loose, so we're not having to manually pull it out, or we know that we've got all the roots out. So that's the easiest way to do it. So if you're going to grow in ground, you want to aim to soften all the soil up like this. You're going to need to add probably manures and some compost to it as well. You can get that from your local soil yard. You might want to consider buying a vegetable garden mix and adding it to your existing soil is another thing as well you can do. It's much cheaper, don't buy it in bags. Much better to get it from your local soil yard. I think it's about $50 or $60 a tonne or something. Get it delivered somewhere close, and then mix it all through. If you've got a power planter, mix it all through with a power planter. So that's one method we're going to use for growing vegetables. If you've got soil that's reasonable, highly recommend that. Let's look at the next one. Now our next option, if you haven't got time to be building raised garden beds from hardwood sleepers or digging over your ground if it's not good enough, is to build raised beds but to use these planter bags. Now we sourced these especially for this job. They are usually designed for growing big trees in, and they have a lifespan of 5 to 10 years outdoors, so they're very UV stable. They're not like the plastic bags that break down, okay? So don't order something else thinking it's gonna last. These are designed for that purpose. You can see this is a very large plant pot we've got here. I think it's about a 20-inch pot, so what's that, about 500 mils across. You could grow in large plastic pots like this if you haven't got any other options, or if you've already got a lot of these, but you are going to get much better results. The bigger the bag, the happier the vegetables are going to be. I just know that from experience. Small pots are harder to keep the plant alive than big pots. So if you want to get some of these, we're selling these on our website. Aussie Gardener members get them at a highly discounted price. They're going to last you a long time. You need to order soil-wise. This bag is 400 litres, so if we convert that into cubic metres, you need 0.4, so 0.4 of a cubic metre per bag. So roughly, well actually a little bit less than that because you don't want it filled all the way to the top. So roughly you would do 1 cubic metre would fill 3 bags. Now each bag is about a metre across. I think it's actually 920, but close enough to a metre in diameter, and 600 millimetres high. So if you can compare that to the beds that I showed you before, we have 8 rows of 8 beds, 8 rows of 8 beds, 8 metres long I should say. So that's 64 square metres. So roughly you'd need 64 of these bags if you wanted to do a same size vegetable garden as us. Of course you mightn't have that space, but I just wanted to give you a comparison as to how you could do it really quickly. We're going to head inside the shed now, and I'm going to show you how to build the raised beds like we have using the hardwood sleepers. All right, so we're going to have a go at building out of these hardwood sleepers here. I'm going to get Kaylene to do this. Yep. You all ready for it?
Hopefully.
Excellent. All right. So building with hardwood sleepers, it is, I guess, harder to do because the timber is heavy. So keep that in mind. You are going to need probably some help. When we built the beds outside, we had a couple of guys that were working for us. We did. And we all worked together as a team. So even when I was cutting, you generally need to have at least another person helping you moving them around because they are fairly weighty. So we're going to work with just some short bits of timber today to demonstrate how to do the joins and things. So remember our beds were 2 meters long and 1 metre wide. So each one of these sleepers, they're not railway sleepers, I was about to say that. So railway sleepers are much thicker. So these are hardwood sleepers here, and you can see the thickness. This is 50 mils thick, so 2 inches, 5 centimetres across there, and they're 200 mils in height, and you buy them as a 3 metre long sleeper. So you can get them from your local timber yard. Ask for hardwood new sleepers at 3 metres long. So that way you can cut 1 metre off the end, and then you're left with a 2 metre section, and then trim that 1 metre section down to make it 900. Why? Because at the ends we're going to put these 2 long ones here, and then we're going to put a bit across the middle here, and that bit across the middle would be 1 metre minus 55 centimetres minus 5 centimetres equals 90 centimetres in the middle there, so 900 mils. So that's what our measurements are when we're cutting the wood. Cutting hardwood, you're going to need a decent quality power saw or a compound miter saw. Don't be using a little cheap one. It won't cope with cutting these sleepers. You'll tend to get a curve in the blade and things. All right. You can get your timber yard as well to cut them. So you can say to them, can you cut them exactly to 2 metres long and 90 centimetres? The second part of it as well. If you tell them what you're doing for it, they'll be able to cut it for you. They might charge you a bit extra for the cuts as well. Yep. So the first thing we're going to do is, well, if we have a look at how this is going to be built, so it's going to be assembled like this. And we're going to put a metal bracket on the inside here to keep it nice and rigid there. Otherwise you tend to get a bit of flexing in it. And then we're going to be putting some bugle screws, or you can use coach bolts, which are like a thicker version of this with a typical hex bolt end on them. And we're going to put the bugle screws through this timber there so that it goes through this one and into this one. You can see the length of that screw it needs to be. We'll just measure this screw to give you an idea. So this one here is 120 mils long, so 12 centimetre bugles.
How many are you going to put?
Okay, we're going to put 3 down here. 3. So if you were doing coach bolts, I'd only do 2 coach bolts because they're heavier duty, but we're doing 3 bugles down here spaced out to stop this timber twisting as it weathers. So we're going to mark those on there. Now, if we can see, we ideally want the bugle screw to go through the center of this one here. So we're going to have to take into account that 5 centimeters we've got there in the timber to know where we're going to put it here. So we'll put this one down. So now what we need to do is we're going to mark 3 points where we're going to put these bugle screws, and we want that to be halfway across there. Now, a cool thing you can do with this little gadget here, this combination square, is you can slide it up, and we know that half of 5 centimeters is 2.5 centimeters. So if we dial in 2.5 centimeters there, you can see that in the close-up camera, and then we just turn this little dial here, this knob, which locks it, so now it won't move. And now if we hold that against here, we can do that, or if you want to get really tricky, we can hold it against there and slide it down all the way across. So that's how you can do a measurement going down like the side of the piece of timber very quickly. That's why I love this tool so much. So we've drawn, how did we go with our texture? I can't really see the line there very much. Maybe we need a thicker texture. We might have worn it out before. We were using it outdoors before. So we want to then, to do our carpentry nice and neat, don't just point, draw X's wherever you want, measure them in, so do it properly. So if we know that this is 200 mils across, we'll look at 10 centimeters in. So we'll go to here. That's going to be our center one. And then we need to put some that are fairly close to the edge, but we don't want to go too close because your timber's all going to break off and it's not going to be a strong joint. So let's say we go 1, 2, 3. So we'll go 30 mils in from the end. We're going to pre-drill these holes because we want something to happen. And this is a mistake that a lot of people make in woodworking. A carpenter once taught me this, and I'm so glad, very good knowledge, is that when you're putting 2 bits of timber together, so we want it so that the hole that's in this one is actually bigger than the screw. So what will happen then is that the screw will go into this bit of timber and this one will slide in like that. And so that's how you lock them together. So that's what we're going to focus on now. So we're going to look at the size of the bugle here, the thickness of that. I don't know what thickness it is, so we're just going to hold it against a drill bit. So let's have a look. this one here. So if we can see that on the camera, hopefully, you can see that the drill bit is just a millimetre on either side bigger than the shaft of this bugle. Okay, and that will allow the timber to slide in. So we're going to put that into our drill. So pass me the drill over there. Now we love DeWalt gear, but if you've got other drills, that's totally fine. We've just found the DeWalt gear is very tough. You can see how dirty our drill is. It really gets a good workout. We use it on the power planter all the time. This particular one here I'm using is the 996 drill. Look, this is the dream drill of kind of cordless drills if you want to get this. Full metal chuck, absolutely beautiful, plenty of torque, that means how much power it's got. And it just does brilliantly on the power planters as well. So I'm tightening that up as tight as I can, making sure that it's nice and straight in the drill. All right. Now we're going to be drilling through timber, so we don't want the drill on slow speed, we want it on high speed. So our speed of our drill is at the top of the drill here. I think we should have cleaned our drill before we did this demo. I feel a bit embarrassed, it's so dirty. So this is the speed, these switches here, 1, 2, 3. So when you're drilling, we generally want a high speed, so we're going to go for number 3, which is the highest. Your drill might only have 1 and 2, so you would put it on number 2. And over here we've got the clutch, and this adjusts the screwdriver setting, and I'll explain that in another video with the power planters a bit more. But we're going to switch it over to drill mode, which is this symbol here. Don't mistake it for this thing that looks like a hammer, because that's hammer mode. And hammer mode goes, you don't want to do that. That's for masonry drilling into bricks. So we put it into drill mode, and you want to try and drill nice and straight. So always remember to hold the drill so it's vertical from 2 angles, both this way and that way. That's it.
Are we 3 yet? No.
Nearly there.
There we go.
Excellent. So you'll actually hear it clunk, and you'll feel it when you go through. You see the technique that Kaylene's using as well is she's clearing the hole out. So she's not just pressing down, continually drilling. She's drilling down a bit and then lifting, which releases the sawdust out of the hole. It spirals back up the drill. Don't touch the drill like I almost did then, it's very hot. It spirals back up the drill and it clears the hole, and you'll find it works a lot better. For our 2 long timbers, they're the ones that go down the side, you're going to do both ends of that. So you would drill that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then on the other bit of timber you do the same, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then you're ready to assemble it, and we're going to put the bracket in there to do the next bit. Okay? So
we don't do the bugles first?
No, because it's going to separate and it's going to be hard to do. So we're going to use this to help us a bit.
Okay.
All right. So what we're going to do now is we've got to think about where the timber's going to go. So this timber's going to mount there, isn't it? So this bracket, if we turn this around, that bracket's going to go in on that point there. So we're going to put the bracket onto this bit first, and we're just going to look down from above and just make sure that that lines up with the timber there.
We're using this drill.
All right, and we're going to swap over, and we're going to use an impact driver for this, because we're going to use some roofing screws. So let's have a look at these. So just have a look at these on the camera there. So these are roofing screws, so they're galvanized. These ones here have got little rubber washers on them. Don't worry about that. If you don't have rubber washers, it doesn't make any difference. But they can stay on. And we're going to use these to hold this plate onto this timber.
Okay.
So when you're at the hardware, make sure you're buying this type, which is designed to go into timber. Okay. And the easiest drill to use now is we're going to swap over to an impact driver, which works a bit differently to the drill. So let's have a look at the size difference of these two. Often when you buy drills, they'll be in a kit, a combo kit like this, and it'll have an impact driver and a drill. A lot of people don't know what this is actually for. It's not for putting normal screws in. Not a good idea. It goes too fast. It's good for putting bugles in. That screw I told you before, the strong long one, and also for putting roofing screws in. Absolutely brilliant for it. And for putting metal screws in, it works really well too. So aim for the center of the large hole. Make sure I'm not holding it at the time. And you do have to press quite firmly with the impact driver for it to work. So hold nice and steady. That's it. Very good. So you can see how that makes a different sound to a normal drill. And it does require a bit of effort. You can't hold it lightly. You've got to really press firmly and control it. Now we're just going to have a look at this. Is it lining up with the edge? Yeah, it is. It's a good fit. So you've done well there. If it wasn't, we would just back this off a little bit in reverse and then bang this with a hammer to get in the right spot.
So I'll try another one?
Yeah, we're going to have a go with the next one. Fantastic.
Using 2 hands made it easier.
Very good. Now we probably could put 3 of these in to this, but we've got to think about something as well. And this is a mistake that I've often made, is that we're putting in screws at this point here, roofing screws, and we're also going to be putting screws through this, which are going to go into this timber, aren't they? So we've got to be careful that the holes that we use here are not going to hit onto these screws. So let's have a look and test that. So if we flip it over, we can see that we've got our 3 hole points here. And then if we turn this around like this, we've got 1 hole that's going to be about here, another one that's going to be below that, it's in the center of that, and the other one's going to be there. So we should be fine.
I got one in.
That's right. I haven't got my earmuffs on. Hang on.
Earmuffs on. Otherwise you'll be deafened. Beautiful.
So we're swapping over to the bugle bit, still in the impact driver with earmuffs on. Press hard. Oh, you haven't got earmuffs on. Press hard. That's it. Use those muscles. There we go. It's grabbed that timber and it slid it in close to the other one, and now we've got a nice. She just wants to get on with the next one. She's not even interested in what I'm saying. So we're gonna.
I like getting the job done.
She's on a roll now. Okay, so now we're going to go with the next one.
Power. Stuck in.
That's it. So we're all the way through, and we'll just check this. Remember, it's a railway sleeper, so it's a bit rough, but we're just going to have a look and see how it is. Is it a right angle? Look at that. That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
That's pretty good. We've got a good right angle there. So you're just going to do that 4 times, and you've got yourself 1 layer of a bed, and then we just stack them on top of each other. I guess it's worth saying that first of all you've got to kind of excavate your side a bit, so make sure it's nice and level. So we first of all we used the power planter to do it, to break the ground up. Then we used a spade and scooped it out, made sure it was level, so that when you're sitting these down, you want them to be sitting on as nice a surface as this. We didn't talk about what soil to use before, so I'll mention that now. So when you fill your beds up, is you need to get soil from your local soil yard. Don't buy bags of soil from the big green shed. It's going to cost you a fortune and waste too much plastic. So get it from your soil yard and ask them for a vegetable garden mix or their best quality mix that usually has a high amount of manure in it. So nitrogen, which is good for the plants. And then you fill the soil up all the way to the top, I'd recommend, because the soil will then settle once you water it, and it will drop down to about 5 centimeters below, and that's enough space for you to have the mulch there as well. Yep. And so then we just sat these on top of each other. We did also use a nail plate. I haven't got a nail plate. That's what a nail plate is, but just a flat version of that. And we put that between each of there. So sorry I haven't got a flat one.
Because we stacked 2 on top of each other, just so that they're staying together.
It just stops them from twisting around. To be honest, they're so heavy, I don't think they're going to move around too much anyway.
We'll just being extra cautious.
All right. But that's how hard it is. The bottom of the bed, I recommend before you actually fill it with soil, if you're only doing it 1 level high, that you break all the ground up below so that you don't have a hard surface. If you are building the bed outdoors and using a kind of a hybrid version of what we said, so you're building only one sleeper high edge on ground level. So remember I had the ground level demonstration where I dug that up. You could use this as the edge. That would be also a really good way to do it. This is deep enough for vegetables. You still need to dig that ground over first before you fill this with your soil as well. Okay, so I think that's covered it. It's not that hard to do. Neither of us are all that skilled at doing.
We're not carpenters. So.
No.
Have a go.
That's what it's been about, hasn't it? Just having a go.
Occasionally, sometimes these screws will break.
Yep.
Sometimes they just snap, so then all we do is just leave them in there if we can, and then just do another one next to it.
Drill another one, that's right. So same as when you're growing vegetables,
so
sometimes
not
things
perfect.
will go wrong. So don't get too stressed about it. Just keep having a go, have a bit of a laugh about it if it's something that you've messed up yourself. But most importantly, we can do this. We can get through this period together, growing our own vegetables at home.
Have fun.